look, I mean, there's always been morons in politics. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, is that the statement that's most obvious ever spoken? But look at the morons in political positions of political, not real, power around the world.
We both spent a little time close to politics, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but look at Biden. I mean, the man is suffering from dementia. End of frickin' story. Everyone can see it. Elephant in the living room. You look at this guy who imposed fascism on Victoria, Australia, Daniel Andrews. Moron. You look at the people, there was a woman called Kerry Chant in New South Wales, I think it was, who was their chief medical officer. Chief medical officer, you wouldn't let her diagnose acne. Moron. Then you have people like Macron. You have the moron of morons in Canada, Trudeau. And yet, they say this is what's happening, and vast numbers of people do it. Some push back, yes, brilliant. But most people just do it. Oh, they've got to do it because Trudeau's a moron. More than that, the World Economic Forum, by this blatant fascist Klaus Schwab, fronted up by him anyway, they started something called the Young Leaders School, to develop leaders to go into positions of power to impose the agenda of the World Economic Forum, which is the agenda of the cult. Some of the names: Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, who turned New Zealand fascist, Macron, who turned France fascist. On and on it goes. You see these same names. The leader of Argentina is a graduate of the World Economic Forum Young Leaders School. And they're all moronic. Now, this is where the psychology comes in, because it's all a psychological game. They got to control you psychologically, because that controls your perception, which controls your frequency, which controls if you get out here or not. So, why do they put so many morons in positions of power? Because if they can get you to see, because it's bloody obvious, that a moron is telling you to do something, and you still do it knowing they're moronic, they got your self-respect. Kaput, finished, over. And once your self-respect is gone, what is left? Submission. That's all that remains, submission. And that's why they're after people's self-respect. In all these areas now, they want to make them, and this is why we talked about the first interview we did when lockdown was coming in, that a great consequence of lockdown is going to be economic. It was obvious that it was going to be economic. They were shutting businesses down. Why wouldn't it be? Well, they didn't shut the big businesses down, just the smaller ones and the medium ones. But that was the first shot below the waterline for the world economy, and that's gone on. They're using the global warming hoax to justify the destruction of energy supply. They then have this invasion by Russia of Ukraine, Ukraine being a fundamentally corrupt country, beyond belief corrupt. And the invasion was sanctioned by Vladimir Putin, which, according to Klaus Schwab, Putin is a graduate of the Young Leaders School, according to him in an interview anyway. And so then the West say, we can't have this. It's all a game, it's all theater. We're putting sanctions against Russia. Yeah, okay. So what sanctions are you going to put in for? Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Oh, right. So what you're doing is you're saying we're going to put sanctions against Russia, but what you're actually doing is sanctioning the West. So suddenly Europe is struggling to provide enough energy. It's going to be catastrophic in the winter. So is America. Once self-sufficient in energy, because of shutting down pipelines and other fossil fuel sources, as Europe has done, there's an energy deficit. And then you've got Russia and China, who are just going along and using fossil fuels like before, with no shutting it down at all, and more coal-fired power stations being produced in China. And what has happened? Systematically, the energy price is going through the roof, and we've seen nothing yet.
Inflation.
Inflation. And another thing about inflation, look at all the fresh air, so-called printed money, based on nothing, that was produced to respond to COVID. As I've said over the years, this agenda is to create a world government, and it would dictate to every community, and we would see the end of countries.